Good morning and good evening. I'm Yawei Chao, your moderator for today's Innovation for Democracy Cafe. I'm very happy to see you again in the Innovation for Democracy Cafe. This is the program that initiated by Friedrich Naumann Foundation's Global Innovation Hub in Taipei. And I'm Yawei Chao. I'm the program manager for the FNF Global Innovation Hub here. I hope you already have a cup of coffee or tea on your hands because the next 1 hour, we're gonna discover whether AI can be helpful for people's participation to public policy and the deliberation. I wonder whether you are at home or at office right now. Maybe you are using ChatGPT or other kinds of generative AI tools to generate the text for emails or social media posts, or you're just seeking for suggestions about your holiday plans. And so I believe it's not so difficult for you to understand why ChatGPT and generative AI is so convenient and why some people will think about using it for deliberations of public policy and to facilitate citizens' participation of any public affairs. And it's because it's not very difficult to understand why many people will still have concerns about using generative AI for deliberations and participation because it's not like everybody understands how it works of those source code or algorithm behind these AI tools. We don't know what drive these AI tools get going, and we don't know what drives it can summarize what people says and how they generate these texts or answers. And we didn't even know whether it can authentically, correctly reflect what people says and whether the answers it generates is correct or based on truth. So that's the reason why we're gonna have this debate today. And now we see Alice is online. Hello, Alice. Dr. Alice Sui, she's going to join the discussion later. And now I still need some time to finish my introduction of today's cafe. Yeah. So yeah. And we just talked about how convenient it is, the AI tool, and why people may have concerns about these AI tools, whether they can truthfully, correctly, authentically reflect what people says, and whether the reply it generates it's authentic or based on truth. And also, I think we still didn't forget the time of COVID-19. People are limited by space to join any discussions of public policy. And this crisis also reminds us that in the normal days, we should diligently discover or explore a technical solution that can allow us to still sustain an ideal level of democracy, even under such time of crisis. And if it is so, then it will be a pity if we stop thinking about what AI can help to help us to sustain people's participation, even there's a time of crisis. So that's why today we're gonna have these discussions about how AI can help and what can it help and what cannot. And so we are very honored to have both experts here today to give us very valuable input. Firstly, we're very honored to have Dr. Alice Sui here. Dr. Sui is the Associate Director of the Deliberative Democracy Lab at Stanford University. She is a lead collaborator on the Stanford Online Deliberation Platform, which is a platform using AI to moderate and facilitate deliberations. And the platform is a partnership program with the crowdsourced democracy team at Stanford. She's going to share her perspective on today's topic by introducing this platform and her very abundant knowledge and experience on deliberative democracy. Welcome, Alice.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And we're also glad to have Mr. Yen-Ting Hsu as our discussant today. Yen-Ting is the co-founder of Taiwan Reach-Out, a very well-known nonprofit organization which implement so many deliberative democracy discussion in Taipei and across Taiwan, of course. The organization has led and implemented various participatory programs such as participatory budgeting program for migrant workers, leisure activities for elderlies, and topics on civil defense. He himself is also very experienced practitioner for participatory democracy, and now he studies in University of California for his PhD. Yen-Ting will help us to examine these AI tools through his lens of a practitioner on the ground. So our pleasure to have you here, Yen-Ting.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And so before we start the discussion today, I think I still have to brief you the process of today. Today we'll do this cafe in a bit different way to make it more engaging and interactive. I will invite the both speakers to join the discussion through a Q&A format. And after that, everybody feel free to type your questions in the chat box. And when it comes to the Q&A session with the audience, I will read these questions and lead the both experts to answer your questions. All right. So without further ado, I think I'm gonna start the first questions with Alice. Okay. So the first question is now we're gonna before we start get to know online deliberation forum, such an inspiring AI platform for deliberation. I think we were very curious to know, can you please use around 5 minutes to tell us what drives you and your team to develop online deliberation forum? And it might be because there are problems you see or encountered during your participating or operating traditional deliberation approach. What problems do you discover and what is that the key drives you to develop this tool?
Yeah, absolutely. So our lab at Stanford has been doing deliberative work for the last 20 years. Our lab director, Jim Fishkin, created the method of deliberative polling, and that was 3 decades ago. For a long time, all the deliberations were done in person, where you gathered representative samples of the public together. In the early 2000s, we actually started doing deliberative work online, and that we started with voice-based deliberations. And then in the 2010s, when Google Meet was more widely available, we started doing deliberations there. And over several years ago, our engineering colleagues came to us and asked us a question about, what could technology do to help democracy? And for us, we had been doing online some and mostly in-person deliberations. And for us, the question and the struggle that we've always had is that in-person deliberations and even online, when we were doing it then, required a human moderator. And which means you have to train human moderators, and you have to ensure that the humans that you're training are of good quality, and that unfortunately, that's as hard as you work and to pick and interview people, there are always a few people that don't quite do the job and don't quite perform as you want them to, and which means that there are always a few groups of participants that don't get the experience that you want them to have. And when you spend so much time and resources to bring people together, that's the last thing you want to happen. And so when our colleagues in engineering raised this question to us, my first reaction was, if there was a way to have technology do what a human would do in facilitating groups, then we could actually scale deliberation so that any amount of people could deliberate in small groups at the same time. That was really the crux of why we moved in this path of trying to create this AI-assisted deliberation platform. And as we will talk about today, we were able to do that. We were able to develop a platform that embodied the many decades of training that we've done with human moderators, took all the important features and put it into the platform. And because of that, we've been able to log 40,000 hours of deliberation on the platform. We've used it in 35 countries. There's 25 different languages that are used on the platform now. And really, any amount of people can be on the platform in a single period of time in their small groups. So we're very excited that it's been able to do that. So I'll stop there, and I'm sure I'll have more things to share later.
Thank you, Alice. I think you bring up a point that I never think about. Yeah, when we think about AI, we always start with its feature of making something operate some very similar functions all the time, and people start worried about it acts like a bot without any human feature. But you just mentioned a very important point is even the discussion is conducted by human beings, there is some imperfect side. For example, the things you just mentioned, like moderator has inconsistent quality. This is something really I foreseen it can be a bit problematic when you conducting such deliberation, because I myself also has the experience of leading such discussions, and this is a really difficult question to solve. And it is really a problem that we're to think about, like how can we use technology to sustain the quality of moderations? Yeah, I think this is really an important point. And Yen-Ting, you also have been leading so many discussions and deliberation. Can you resonate the problems that Alice just mentioned, or you saw many more problems when we use traditional ways to conduct a deliberations, or and do you think that can be solved or tackled by technology?
Yeah, so I think this is a really, first of all, marvelous work for what Stanford has been doing. And it is like, when hearing about this idea, I was so excited. And then to see some of the introduction that's available online or something. So I think I really look forward to learning more about the mechanism of how it works. That is my first comment. But with regard to your question, Yahweh, I think that I definitely can share what Alex was talking about, is because when I recall my own training as a facilitator, what I was being trained, first of all, we need to know the idea of deliberative democracy, right? So not only about history, but also about the rules and then the kind of vibe that we want to bring, the kind of experience we want to bring to the participants of the deliberative democratic event. So that is something that we always keep in mind, and that's we want to foster a really ideal scenario for conversation, for a high quality conversation. But it is really a challenge for the quality of the facilitators. So I totally resonate with that, because I was doing training myself, and then like training new people really requires a lot of time and efforts, and then it really and I believe that it does it still like contribute to a society in a way that it is a training for democracy, right? But it is also a challenging work if we really would like to scale up, like what Alice was saying, like if we have a goal of like having a deliberation day, right? So what I can recall, like only the very example that I recall is a massive deliberation was in Taiwan, was like 10 years ago, when there was a very huge social movement called Sunflower Movement, and that it was like so many people. And then because Taiwan has a history of like doing deliberative democracy for 10 years, so we can gather some people as facilitators and then to do that. But it was still hard, because if you think about it, in the social protest scene, right? So many people there, and then how do you organize facilitation? That is really hard. So I'm just like just so interesting to learn like what online deliberation can work for in real life. So
Yeah.
definitely looking forward to your sharing, Alice.
Thank you, Yen-Ting. Then I think now we all like agree, from the practitioners' point of view and experience, we all agree that there are some problems that need to be solved when we use traditional way to conduct deliberation and the discussions. And we just mentioned the quality to sustain the quality of moderator is one of the most obvious problems. So now I think our audience just can't wait to see how the online deliberation forum works to tackle these problems and what are other inspiring functions or features that this platform can show us, can bring the solution. So Alice, can you use 15 minutes to showcase the online deliberation forum for us?
Of course. So I'm going to share some slides right now. All right. As Yahweh mentioned, this is a collaboration with our engineering colleagues at the Crowdsourced Democracy team, also at Stanford. I noted we've used and tested this deliberation around the world already. The features of the platform and a lot of the things that we had to consider as we were developing this. One of the things was a speaking queue, just like you would in person have a deliberation. A moderator would, you would probably raise your hands and the moderator would write down or take note of who is raising their hands and who gets to speak next and in what order. That is exactly what the speaking queue is. There's a button where you press request to speak, and the system will put you into a queue. And each person gets to speak for about 45 seconds at each turn. The time of it can be adjusted, so you could adjust it to 60 seconds or 90 seconds, however long. We've done a little bit of testing to find the optimal speaking time. We found that 45 seconds is about the time that it takes for someone to express a complete thought. And it's not too short or too long, but nevertheless, you can adjust that. And there's a timer on the screen so that when participants are talking, they can see how much time has elapsed, and then people in the queue can see when it's their turn to speak. There's a timed agenda. So just like you would in a human moderated session, the moderator will tell you we have 10 minutes for this topic. We have another 10 minutes for another topic. So the system does the same thing. It alerts you when agenda is about to run out of time and when you have to move on to another agenda item. A slightly unavailable in the human version is real-time transcripts. So as the discussion is happening, and I can show you in a couple of slides, is the real-time transcription. If you were observing a small group session in real life, you would only be able to observe one group at a time. But in the online platform, you can actually have unlimited amount of tabs on your browser open. Each tab could be one group. So if we had 40 groups deliberating, you could have 40 tabs open, and you could see simultaneously what is happening in each of the groups, so that you actually don't miss anything. So if you were in group A for the first 10 minutes, and then you move to group B, you can still start from the beginning of the transcript in group B and see how the conversation has transpired. So it makes it for really interesting to be able to capture and see what is happening in all the groups. The platform also detects offensive language. This is done through API called Perspectives API. The platform also nudges participants to speak. And if they haven't spoken in a while, or if they haven't spoken at all, they get a nudge by the platform. The nudges get increasingly more personalized as the discussion happens. So if you, it's in the beginning, you probably get a simple one like, oh, would you like to join the conversation? And then as the conversation continues, and if you still haven't spoken, the system will pull some arguments that are in the agenda and will suggest to you, oh, what do you think about this argument? Would you like to share some thoughts with your group? So it will increasingly give you more ideas to join the discussion. And we've actually shown in a forthcoming paper that the nudges in the system actually encourages more deliberation. And so about 1 out of 2 times when the nudges happen, the participants will actually get in the queue to speak. And all of this we have, as I mentioned, really based off of the years of moderator training that we've done, and we've compared the online and in-person results in our work, and we find very high participant evaluations and also significant opinion changes, both online and face-to-face. And most importantly, in my opinion, that we continue to see the building of trust and empathy in the online discussions. We see that people are learning from each other, liking each other more, and wanting to continue the conversation, even though it's done online. So it's quite exciting to be able to see those group relationships being built, even through an online platform. I have a short clip here for us to watch. It's about a minute long, and I am just hoping that I shared my sound. So I'm just going to double.
Just every part of our day-to-day life, common media consumption, everything. And now it's all become so segmented that we're losing touch with each other. And I think that having a common experience that every person in the country goes through this year of service to their country is not only fulfilling a duty, but it's also connecting us together.
I mean, I would love that unity. I think that would be great, but I just don't think it's practical and forcing people into a year of service. I mean, there are a lot of people who couldn't afford it. Like, I know for my life, I don't know when I would have done it. Like the year after college, I just had a baby, and I needed money. I needed a real job. So I don't know.
So this event, this clip is from 2021, when the American Academy of Arts and Sciences commissioned a deliberation, and they were talking about whether young people should be required to do public service. And you can see this is the observer side of the platform. You can see the queue that I mentioned in the middle of the screen, the timer, and we capture all of the web interactions. Once the participants log into the system, we capture everything. And so when I talked about the real-time transcription, we actually have a graphic in the back end where you can actually see everything that's happened in the group. So you have the names on one side, and the moment they log in, we can see when they're talking. The blue bars, if this was on the platform, if I hover over the blue bars, it's actually what people said, so you can see the transcript. The yellow dots are the nudges, when the system has nudged the person to speak. The black here that you see near the bottom is the queue. So the more black bars there are, it means that at that point, more people were in the queue lined up to chat. And then the last row here is toxicity, which is offensive language. And the more pink it is, the system is flagging that potentially there is language that is offensive. And more of this that is in the transcript. It records everything, and then we record the audio so we can go back and listen to the audio as well as reading the transcript. And we have question development phase. That's a part of the deliberation in deliberative polling, where the participants as a group come up with a couple questions that they want to ask the expert panel after their small group discussion. So the platform creates a system where you can type in questions individually that you want to ask, and then the group will rank choice the number of questions. The group will then edit questions together, and they rank their first choice question and the second choice question that they want to pose to the experts. And you can see how people are changing their rankings as they're voting each time. So there's a lot of information in the system that we capture. I call it, for those that are researchers on the call, I call it research heaven, because we can really dive into all aspects of deliberation to really understand what people are saying and the types of information that they're sharing. Just to sum up here, as I mentioned, lots of opinion changes. I don't have time to share it here. Happy to share papers and such. The QR codes are papers that we've written recently about deliberation and how it can eliminate or at least alleviate partisan polarization, and also one where we found in college students how deliberation can depolarize. But it's not just among college students, it's among everybody, where even if people that are very similar to each other, very homogenous, and when they deliberate together, they are actually able to moderate their opinions. There are a lot of psychology studies that talk about if people that think similarly talk to each other more, there's a higher likelihood that they become more extreme. But we don't find that in our deliberations, in the structure and the civil manner that the deliberations are being held. We find that participants are actually able to moderate their opinions. And I'm happy to talk about that more too in questions. So I will stop there right now.
Thank you, Alice. This is very inspiring tools, and I'm really fascinated to see how it can bring new possibility, particularly now. I think everybody feel that the discussion is very polarized and
Yeah.
extreme when we get into social media. And I just can't help imagine how this tool is gonna happen to tackle these problems. So, and also I'm really happy to hear that the participants can be more, can have more compassionate to each other, to trying to understand what the opinions of different persons and generate more compassion and the willingness to discuss. So I'm really happy to learn how this tool is working. And now we're going to ask Yen-Ting. And Yen-Ting, I remember you said that you haven't got the opportunity to use AI for deliberation, and that's why your opinion is very important. So we just heard about how this online deliberation forum works. And from your lens, Yen-Ting, your lens as practitioners, what are your thoughts about this platform? And what functions can be really helpful if you recall your experience of implementing the deliberations that you have been done? And what are the areas that technology can help or might not be able to help? We want to hear your thoughts.
So several thoughts. So, but I think this is a great job from the perspective of the facilitator, practitioner, myself. I think that really, I was most fascinated by the function of nudging. Like, is that about like how to? It's really the core about facilitation, right? You really want people to speak to each other, and then it is our work to inspire others to talk, right? So that is something that I think that the platform did really well on. Another thing that I'm very amazed is about how about the equality that is being built into a system, right? So it's like everyone has 45 seconds of like speaking. That is makes everyone's voices are heard. And this is an important criteria that is in the ideal of deliberative democracy. But there are some comments, of course, and that I would like to have some discussion, maybe to also inspire like people in the audience to maybe to think with us together, because I don't have an answer myself. But I think like facilitation itself is not only a skill, but also an art, right? It is a skill when I was referring to that, first of all, like when I was complimenting about like the equality of like how different voices being heard, it also means that as a facilitator, you need to have a good mastery of the rules, right? Of the democratic rules. So that is something that is more, I think, is a skill set that we need to have. Another skill set we need to have as a facilitator is a good command of the issues, right? So that we need, because so that we know like how where's the core of the issue, and then how we can lead our discussion. But that comes with an artistic part, right? Artistic part in the way that how do we ensure the depth of the discussion? If just nudging is the function, saying, oh, do you agree with what other people are saying? How do we bring about all the dimensions that are not being covered in the discussion, right? Assuming that deliberative polling, we have so many experts have shared their opinions, but we also want to make sure that different opinions are being delivered in the discussion, right? So that is something that I want to ask about, a spontaneous composition that is built, and how does that build into the system, the artistic part of that. And also, what about some it seems like people in the chat is like having a very meaningful discussion, but what about if they're but it is just to also like, how do you make sure that, because like as a facilitator, we need to learn like different methods, methods, for example, using sticker notes or some other ways of categorizing opinions. That is also what makes deliberations so fun and so interesting as an experience for participants, right? So how are there different methods that is built into the system to make online deliberation interesting, and especially fit that participants demographic and also their discussion? I'll stop here.
Thank you, Yen-Ting. Thank you for providing your feedback. Your questions are really valuable. I'll just, but I think I have to summarize again so Alice and the audience can better understand it. And I think the first question you want to talk about is the moderator, the skill it has to have is not just the skill of facilitation. It also, the moderator also has understanding of the topic itself. So he can know just not to push people to talk, but also trying to reflect everybody's opinion, and also detect whether it is different opinion that is not reflected yet, and invite those people who might have different opinion but never talk. This is the one thing that you want to know whether the platform can make. And another question is whether the platform itself can provide different methods for deliberation to facilitate discussion, because you just mentioned maybe in some occasions using sticky notes can encourage participants to talk, and maybe in other occasions people like to have different facilities or equipment to encourage them to talk. Now we want to know whether the online deliberation forum can offer diverse methods for inspiring discussions, right? This is the questions you want to ask, right? Okay, so Alice, would you like to answer or provide some thoughts?
Yeah, I may need help to remind me of the second question as I answer the first, but I do agree. Moderating is certainly an art form, and I think that there are things obviously the platform can't do, and I think this is a discussion point for all of us here too. one of the things that we talk about is the variety of deliberative methods that are available. And I think the style that the platform has is actually a more of a hands-off method where we try to let participants have the ability to coordinate and navigate the discussion, and we try to let it to be more organic. And even in the in-person deliberative polls that are done, the moderator has a very light touch and really lets the participant drive the conversation. I mean, and the facilitator still, make sure they stay on task and that they discuss all the issues, but there are other deliberative methods that are out there that some of you may be familiar with already, where um, the moderator has a very heavy hand and wants to like, there's certain questions you have to ask, or probing questions and things like that. And I think that it really depends on the purpose of the deliberations or the discussions that are being had, because I think there's a time and place for a style of moderation that's very heavy-handed, and you want to push the participants to reach some type of decision or something, whereas the style that we have is much more on the lighter side, more conversational, more organic, and there's a time and place for that as well. And on the note about just the artfulness of it, I think it's very interesting, because as we think, what I've been thinking about a lot is how language models and AI agents can contribute to the deliberations as well, because if you do allow agents to be a part of the deliberation, they can be quite artful and they can be quite probing, depending on how you want the language models to perform. So I think there is a world where you could potentially have moderation that is done by language models that could be probing, but I personally am not there yet. I think it still requires a lot of thought and care and research to understand, like, whether and how we want the language models to take. So I think it's a question. Can you remind me the second question again?
Second question is, Yen-Ting wants to know whether the platform allows a moderator to use diverse way to facilitate discussions. For example, he just mentioned in some occasion we use sticky notes, and participants are happy with that. But maybe in other occasion, people want to try different things that can facilitate discussion. Can the platform offers this kind of space?
Yeah, and I think what I alluded to in the beginning, I think there's a time and place for the different styles of deliberation. I think it's really important, as we're thinking about here, is to understand the purpose of the discussion groups or the deliberations that we're having, so that the purpose matches the style that's being had. When we're trying to have group thinking, group activities where we want people to be more active, proactive, engaging, and working with each other, and being collaborative to kind of like reach a group task together, like having the sticky notes and being able to be in person and be around and interacting, like that's very important. And that's kind of like group bonding, or among people that or your teammates or your coworkers. So I think there's a time and place, and certainly I'm not saying that our platform is good for everything. But I think that in the way that our lab is thinking about it, in scaling to a place where we could get potentially millions of people deliberating together, like this is the style that we think could work. It would be I think there probably is other platforms that could be, using AI and other types of agents and language models to help facilitate more dynamic and active deliberation as well. I still have many conversations being at Stanford and being in this place where there's a lot of discussion about when and where to use the available technologies and really trying to understand the impact on human behavior before we try to deploy it more widely.
Thank you, Alice, for the perspectives you provide, and I think we do believe that your future research, after you get to know how it works, can definitely develop better tools, because we can feel that you have a very clear understanding about there should be differences between depends on the occasions that you implement these deliberations, and you also talk about we have to see how the language model works, how it can play a more ideal role to facilitate discussions. And also you mentioned, I think this is also a challenge about sometimes when we implement deliberations, the moderator has different style, and some of them might, just like you said, have very heavy hands over the discussions. And it can have upsides or downsides. The upside is the dialogue will be very interactive, but the downside is some participants may feel a little bit pressured about this kind of too heavy-handed style of moderations. And I think this is why I think the Online Deliberation Forum is very important, because it can help to sustain a consistent style or level of moderation. So I think these are the really very important points you bring up. And yeah, so I think now, Yen-Ting, do you have some feedback?
Yeah, I actually, if time allows, I actually want to want us to think about another issue that I also think is important. So I think I appreciate that, Alice, you're saying that this is important. Like, I like how you mentioned clarify that the online platform that you're you're developing is like kind of a hands-off approach, right? So I think that is important, and I totally agree that it is something that should be put in the front, and to tell the practitioners that this is something that we do, and then this is how we do, because this is a goal that we are trying to match, right? So the means match with the goal. So I really appreciate that, and that is important. And I do agree that there are also a variety of different methods that is suitable for different occasions, right? So for different purposes. So I do agree with that. But even with this even I agree with that, there's another point that I want to mention or want to discuss, is the issue between equality and equity. So I think this is an important dimension, because and this also connects back to some of the human part of the facilitation, is that I think essentially what public engagement professionals, what we are doing as facilitator, are trying to level the playing ground, right? So something that we are trying to do, because we know that the many publics, all the participants, come into the venue with their own experiences. And when we are trying to make a representative sample, it also implies that they come with different backgrounds, they come with different skill sets, come with different social capital, economic capital, and cultural capital, right? So it means that some people are like, some people speak more, or some people speak less. Of course, this is like being of course you already have a time people's conversation already. That is a function that's built into the platform. But what about those who have less cultural capital, who are having difficulties in expressing what they want to say, right? So, and they just have 45 seconds as well. And does that really facilitate equity instead of equality, right? So I think that is in the film and in the video that you show that people are very like seem to have a really engaging conversation. But what if this kind of participants show up in the representative sample in the mini public? And how does equity build into the design of online platform?
Yeah. No, I completely agree with it. And I think we have to be very mindful of that. We have a paper that we wrote recently looking at the deliberation and the how people are contributing based on various demographics, and whether it's gender or race and et cetera. And we find there is relatively equal deliberation amongst people based on different demographics. I think one thing that I've heard from interviewing participants afterwards is specifically to what Yen-Ting was pointing out about the time that people get to deliberate and the queue that people form. A lot of people actually talked about how having the queue relieves a lot of anxiety in understanding when they're supposed to engage in the conversation. I think many of us have been in those Zoom meetings where people are talking back and forth, interrupting and overlapping each other, and someone who may not be as comfortable jumping into the conversation or not as experienced in those conversations don't know like when is the socially acceptable time to get into the conversation, and then may feel like, oh, I missed my chance, so I'm not going to talk anymore. I think that's all happened to us at some point. But the platform and the structure of the queue and the timer has relieved that anxiety for many people, and in that way has really given people the confidence to know that, oh, I know the queue, I know when I'm going to speak, I know when I'm going to speak because everyone only has a certain amount of time. And that in a sense has given people that confidence to engage in the deliberations. I think that's one aspect in trying to have equity and being able to be mindful of that. I think there are ways as we were conceiving of building the platform, we're thinking about algorithms that for participants that talk a lot, we could deprioritize them in the queue, and or things like automatically putting people in the queue that haven't spoken a lot and like forcing that. So there are different ideas that we have also been playing around with and trying to, as you were raising, like trying to figure out what features could we try that would encourage people to speak and give them the confidence to do so, but not be intrusive and make people uncomfortable either. But I completely agree that we have to build in things that would try to, if not be the same methods we use in person, but maybe better than methods we can use in person. But yes, I completely agree.
I think this is a really meaningful conversation. Like Yen-Ting brings up the issue of equality and equity, and whether everybody, even everybody get the equal time to talk, but when it comes to the ability about how they phrase their words, it's another issue. So that inspired Alice to talk about in the future we should definitely try more algorithm or maybe more technology assistant that can help to form an ideal comfortable inclusive environment to let everybody have equal say. And I just also very like the point that Alice mentioned, because I myself is also an introverted person. I'm the one who doesn't really know the timing to how to jump in that Zoom conversation. So this cue is really helpful for me. And I'm also the person like feel a bit sorry about interrupting everybody. So if there's a timer that really can save me from this awkward situation for me. So I think this is you just indicate a very interesting and important point for people who are more introvert. So this is really interesting. Yeah. So now we I think just blame my poor moderation skill that we now have 10 more minutes for audience to raise their questions. And I also already see some questions appear on our chat box. So I gonna now I will read the questions and I will invite you to answer those questions. So we got a question from David. He wants to ask, how do you establish what is offensive when you use ChatGPT? Sometimes there are topics that could be awkward but not offensive, but AI, I think this is AI, right? Take it like something incorrect. So maybe I will invite Alice to answer first because you obviously have higher level knowledge about AI than me. Okay.
No. But the first question that David's asking, at least on the platform, how we define something as offensive, it's based on the libraries that are available. So Perspective AI is designed to identify specific language words that are considered offensive, and they have many libraries, an assortment of languages, where if you can see in the library the types of words that are usually flagged, or the combinations of words that are usually flagged in conversations. And you can, when we use the libraries as well, we can also add to the library if we anticipate certain words that may be sensitive, or ones we need to be aware of, then we can add to that library. So that's how it detects whether something is offensive. I can't exactly comment on the ChatGPT portion of the comment, but yes, I agree. Sometimes ChatGPT does do things that not all of us like. So it is I think for that is a matter of language model training and fine tuning, something that I don't have it's above my pay grade. I don't do that too much myself.
Okay. Thank you, Alice. Yeah, I think well, yeah, we're now working at OpenAI, so we don't really know what it make the tool, but what is important is still an ideal composition of data and ideal training about any AI tools. That is very essential, important, because nobody wants to see biased content it generate. So this is definitely activists in digital rights or engineers or experts in AI field definitely need to think about. Yeah. And we have Yen-Ting, do you also want to comment or no? Okay. All right. So we also have another questions. It's from Judy. She wants to ask, she wants to know, why do we think participants become empathetic online compared to in-person deliberation, and how do we arrive at the conclusion? Is there a process in online deliberation that can provide insights for in-person deliberation? Yeah. So Alice, do you want to? Yeah.
I think, I think a lot of people assume that in online interactions, we're not able to build those human connections that people would have in face-to-face conversations. And what we found is that that it is really the way that people interact is like telling stories and telling like various experiences that we each have. And it's through those stories and through those sharing that people learn about each other and start to relate to each other. And so whether or not those conversations are have online or in person, we still are able to build those connections. And to clarify, like a lot of the events that we do are representative samples, which means the people are strangers to each other. And, for one reason or another, like we as humans are able to open up to strangers more somehow than to friends and family, perhaps. That's something else, a whole another line of research. But we find that, as strangers come together, whether online or face to face, there's some comfort level in knowing that we can share and talk about all these things with this group of people. And we may not see them ever again. And therefore, I could share my thoughts and share my ideas, and they, won't be offended, perhaps. I think I think people find that very comfortable. And also, they're able to say things they may not say normally to people. So I think that's where a lot of the empathy is built and where people are really able to learn about each other. In the second part of the question about whether there are things online that can be shared in person, I honestly, I think the benefit of online is just the fact that the frequency that you're able to have conversations. I think we all learned that during COVID, where people became way more comfortable of having conversations online with strangers. And so I think that that comfortability would be quite interesting if we started thinking about how we could be comfortable of doing things like that online. I mean, doing in person as we learned online.
Thank you, Alice. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yen-Ting, you want to say something?
If I could quickly jump in, I would just want to add a very minor point about how online interaction might be sometimes facilitate empathy better because like this, right? So everyone needs to listen to me talking right now, right? So it's in the in-person setting is sometimes as a moderator, you also need to like spot people like forming small groups talking, right? But in an online setting, that everyone are listen to the person who is speaking in front of you. So that is something that we will also want to cultivate as attentive listening, right? Active listening, we listen to other people saying, and then to engage with what other people are talking about. So this is probably a really just side note of how online setting might actually benefits a more empathetic feeling to come out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is really, again, very interesting discussions, like sort of breaking people's image that the online ways of deliberation or discussion might not generate organic connections. But what happens during COVID and the experience of Alice using the online deliberation forum, it could have some other implication but beyond our expectation, particularly when you mention like talking to a stranger that can accidentally open up the opportunities of everybody of being honest. This is really interesting but very realistic sharing. Yeah. And also we now have more questions from the audience. We have a question from Jiawei. He wants to ask he wonders more about how to analyze or circulate the opinion or discussion with AI tools. Have you used any tools to help extract insight from discussion, or is it better or worse than real person? I think I still have to invite Alice to reply to this question. Yeah.
There are a number of tools that are available to study online discussions. We have a language model that we use that we built out with a company, and really studying a number of things. One, whether arguments are being used in discussion. Two, if they are, like whether they're in support of a proposal, in opposition. And then we're looking at how those arguments are changing opinions and being able to connect that with the survey results. But the language models have eliminated a lot of undergraduate researchers, but it's been amazing. We started using our language models like 3-4 years ago, and it's really been able to drive a lot of insight into explaining why certain opinion changes happen. It is definitely, we have a paper also studying the difference between using a language model in the research and coding versus a human or a number of humans doing it. And we found that, as you all know, if you use any of the popular language models are way better at summarizing than humans are. And language models are also quite good at teasing out important facts and arguments than humans are. So I think that by and large, language models do a pretty good job of understanding what discussions are had, what arguments people are using, and essentially summarizing what the conversations are about. So I think we have to use our human brains to do other things that the models can't do, which there are still a lot of things that we humans can do better. But to answer the question, yes, better than humans.
Thank you, Alice, for giving us a very clear comments about that. And that, yeah, I really agree with you that, yeah, now we have the AI tools, and if we know that it can do something better than human beings, then let's invite it to do so and leave our human brains to ask AI to do the things that we want it to do, or the things that it cannot do. And it will be a great combinations between AI and human beings, and we can know clearly how to make prevent we are being replaced by AI, because we now clearly knows what AI can do and what AI cannot, and in what aspects that human beings' efforts will be very important. Yeah. So Yen-Ting, do you want to add something?
No, I think I just like look forward to like all these like democratic innovations, and then yeah, just like looking forward to that.
Yeah, we are about to approach to the end of this cafe. Once again, I really appreciate both of you for allowing me and the audience to have this really meaningful conversations. And I do believe that this conversation will also have some contribution. And I really thank Yen-Ting for offering your perspective and analysis of a practitioners for participatory democracy. And I also really thank Alice for being willing to join this conversation with us. I really appreciate your open and very considerating and way of thinking. And I'm really confident that with you and all the team in Stanford University, the online deliberation forum will become the very, very ideal tools for democracy. And thank you all for being here to trying to discover ways to have more innovation for democracy, because that's so important when democracy is under so many crises right now. And once again, thank you so much.